So one of the most highly requested features for PowerApps is to create a TreeView control in the cases when you have hierarchical data. And Microsoft does not have it on the roadmap, but I will show you how you can make your own TreeView control. We'll start by showing you an app that I built. This app has the database of all of the media companies and their ownership structure. So we'll go through the screens and then you'll see how this works. First, this screen has the listing of all the properties. The back end is a SQL Server database. And then if you click into a particular card, you can go into the tree view mode, which is essentially a gallery. And you can see that this shows us the entire structure for Time Warner, and Adult Swim is part of TBS, which is part of Turner Broadcasting System, which is ultimately owned by the parent Time Warner. And check this out. Look at HBO International that has 14 children, all these HBO properties. Click on the minus sign, and it turns into a plus and collapses everything that's underneath it. If you click onto that parent, you can collapse all of the HBO, you can collapse all of the Time Warner, the Time Incs, etc. So you can see that this tree structure works. And I'll explain to you what are the prerequisites, but first let me show you just some, at a high level, how this is built. So in my tree view screen, I essentially have a gallery control that has an image, that is the icon, and it has the label, which comes from the database. On the back end, I'm using Azure SQL. So let me connect to the database so I can show you what this looks like. And here's my database. Sorry. It is the company relationship database. I have a table which contains all of the entities. Please hold. It's not supposed to take so long. There you go. Entities, and if you look at this table, you'll see that for each entity there is an entity ID. There is a link to the parent, essentially a integer that tells you who the parent is. Here it is. Let me expand this. So I have the entity name. This is a link, a foreign key to an entity type that tells me if it's a company or a person or different types of properties. I have a logo that I store as an image. It's a whole different trick, and I've learned this from someone else. I'll put some links on how to store the logos as a text field. I have the parent ID. So in this case, you see that RTL Group, which is ID2, has a parent of 1. And if you've been building tree structures in databases, then this is nothing new. You can start to see here the whole ownership structure laid out in the parent ID record. That is the only thing that the dataset contains. But what I did is I created some pretty cool views for this table. And this is the most important part of this trick on the back end. I created a build tree path, and I'm using a method that I'm going to show you. And I'll publish the source code for this so that you can reuse it. I'm using something called the CTE table, which is an in-memory table. It allows you to do recursive operations. And what I'm doing is I'm going through all of the records. These are all of the entities who do not have a parent, which means they are top-level parents. And for each one of them, I am building up a tree path so that you can see where you are for each node, where you are in the tree. Let me show you the outcome. The outcome from this query is oh, sorry, this is not the query. Let me get this is a view. Let me show you the output from this view. Let me show you the output from this view. Sorry. Here we go. Expand this a bit. So the key is the same. You have the parent ID, which is the same. It calculates the level in the hierarchy. You'll see how that's used. Essentially, that's used to indent the items. So level 1, 2, 3. I think I start from level 0. So that determines the indentation. I have I'm calculating who is the ultimate parent. This is helpful if someone is clicking on the card for a sub company, then I can quickly find out who is the ultimate parent and show the whole org structure up to the top owner. And then this is that calculated tree path. So for this particular entity, or Shura TV, it is owned by the ultimate parent's ID7, Boyas Construction, which owns TF1, which owns this entity. And then the rest of it comes from lookup tables, not important for the tree view. But the most important is whether it has children, what is the child count. So here is a parent that has 12 children in it, and yes, it won. It has a flag that says it has children. Here is the tree path for that node. Here's the ultimate parent. And all of this is being calculated by that one query that showed you this build path. I'll explain how that works in detail, but let's look at how this is displayed. So going back to here, what I'm doing is I'm building up a collection. Here is the collection. This collection pulls in the entire tree structure for the ultimate parent for the chosen entity. So if you chose a company that is 3 levels down within a company, it'll go to the parent. In this case, the ultimate parent is Time Warner for the chosen entity, and it builds a table, a collection in PowerApps in memory that tells you for each row of the children underneath the ultimate parent whether it has children. Here's the entity ID, how many children, direct children it has, and don't forget that Time Warner has 5 children, but each one of them can have, like in the case of HBO, 15 children underneath it. And it tells you what is the level. So Time Warner is the ultimate parent, it's level 0, it does not have a parent. And then I create 2 custom fields, show and expanded. Let me show you how this is done. So remember where we started. We started by displaying the card for a particular entity, Adult Swim, which is somewhere underneath the Time Warner family. And then we clicked on this button. So this button, the icon tree button, creates the collection. What it's doing is taking the query that I showed you, the build tree path, and it sorts by the tree path. This is the most critical part, because if you don't pre-sort your company collection by the tree path, then you won't be able to see that. That is why you're seeing this look like a tree, because if I go back to the view, the order is Time Warner, and then HBO is Time Warner, arrow, HBO. So the order that visually looks like a tree is essentially a sort by the text value for that tree path field. So that's very critical. And then I'm adding a couple of fields that I'm going to need in order to format this and lay it out nicely. And I'm adding 2 custom fields to my collection, expanded and shown. The reason I'm adding these 2 is because, let me play this, because when you collapse a node, you want all of the children underneath it to not be visible, but you also want to retain some indicator that that parent node has been collapsed. And the reason is, when I played with this, I started to see some anomalies. If you have HBO expanded as it is right now, and then you collapse it, you want to make sure that when you collapse the parent above it, you want to toggle on or off the visibility for these, and you want to know that the HBO has been collapsed so that you can change its icon. Now what I'm doing, when you click onto one of these icons, and the plus and minus are really the only ones that do anything, then I'm patching the collection twice. Once to touch the nodes underneath what you clicked, so all of the items that are not the same tree path as the one you clicked on, but all the ones that contain the path in their path. So what does that mean? If HBO is the ultimate parent, then the items that have HBO in their tree path but are not that individual node are the children. So for instance, if you clicked on HBO, then Cinemax is HBO Arrow Cinemax, and HBO International is HBO Right Arrow HBO International, etc. So that is what this filter is. So and again, to explain what I'm doing, I'm selecting all of those children and I'm setting their shown to true or false depending on whether you or not you've expanded it, and then I go back and do another patch just to the parent to toggle its expanded status. And the expanded, don't forget, is used to determine whether we want to display a plus or a minus. The shown is whether or not we want it visible. Now, how do I use these fields? Very easy. In the individual records, image has, I think I'm using the height. No, sorry, I'm using an actual filter. So in the tree view itself, the source, you will see the source, the items, is a filter of all of those tree items whose shown field is true, which means that when you click on the plus, let me it's easier to show. So when you click on the HBO on it in order to collapse it, remember that on select event is to patch the collection and set all the children's shown values to false. What it does, it causes the entire tree view to filter out those who we've just set to false. The other thing that I'm doing is the icon. If you go to the icon that precedes these, where's the image? If it has children, then we want to do a plus or a minus. If it's an end node that doesn't have children, then it's going to have just a leaf. So I have 3 images. If you look at my images, I have a minus icon, a plus icon, and a leaf icon. And that's how I determine what to display. And again, remember we were toggling the expanded icon for these records that we were expanding or collapsing. That's where this dynamically gets allocated. So this is a quick overview. I'm going to post an article with all the source code and additional details, but I hope you find this helpful to build your own tree structure.